Tram-One is a new view framework that makes it simple to build web applications. My name is Jesse Jurman, and in this tutorial we'll go through the process of creating a web app from scratch using Tram-One. We'll be building a tiny web app to translate English to Pig Latin. Here's a simple diagram of what we'll be building. I'll also include a link to the final result in the video description if you have any trouble replicating any of the steps here. We'll run npm init to give us a package.json file for our dependencies and npm commands. Next, we'll install two packages from npm, Tram-One and Budo. Budo isn't required to use Tram-One, but makes web development quick and easy. We'll set npm start to run using Budo and give us hot reloading so changes we make are shown in the client instantly. We'll create a bare bones index.html file. In order for Tram-One to work, we need a DOM element to attach to, which we'll use a div with the class main. Next, we include the script that Budo will expose as main.js, which is a browserified build of our app. In order for hot reloading to work, we'll also need to include a script tag to connect to Budo's live reload. This isn't required, but will make our development easier. Next, we'll create our main JavaScript file, main.js. We'll import Tram-One using require, and we'll create an HTML function using the Tram-One library. Next, we'll make a function called home, which will render our home page. It uses the HTML function we pulled from Tram-One to turn template literal strings into DOM. We can write HTML in here, and will be rendered as real DOM elements. For our header, we'll create an h1 tag and an hr tag for the line. The final step is to create an instance of Tram-One, which we'll call app. We can now associate the home page with a route on the browser. We'll use the root route, so navigating to the URL will show the home page first. While not shown in this tutorial, Tram-One supports all sorts of routes, including query parameters and dynamic routes. Next, we start the app by telling it what element we want to attach to. In this case, we'll use the div that we made in index.html. Now when we run npm start, Budo should kick off and we can get to our app. Let's open the Chrome inspector and see the DOM. We can see the div we made in index.html, and under that, the h1 and hr tag that we defined in our home function. One of the benefits of Tram-One is creating reusable elements. Let's turn our header into an element that we can define in another file. First, let's create a folder for all our subcomponents. We'll call it elements. We'll export a function, which takes in no parameters, and returns HTML, similar to what we did in main.js. We'll grab the HTML function by importing Tram-One and calling tram.html. Now we can use the header in our home page by passing in the function we made into tram.html. Tram.html takes in a mapping of custom elements' names to functions. Now, when we call HTML, we can use our new header tag to use the function from another file. We can use single names, hyphenated names, or capitalized names, like in React. It's recommended that you don't use single lowercase names, as these might conflict with real HTML tags. So we'll stick with our pig-header. Let's take another look at our diagram. We need an input area and an output area still. For the input element, we'll pull in Tram-One and HTML function again. Like the header, we'll export a function that returns HTML. This time, we only need to export a text area though. Like the header, we import this as a custom element in our HTML function. And now, under the header, we can see our text area. But it's a little small. Let's look at one common way to add CSS to our elements. Because we are using template literals to build our DOM, we can include variables in the strings. Here we add a width equals 100% so the element extends to the entire width of the page. Let's add a few more just to make the font bigger and give it some more space. Next, we'll make our pig output element. As with the input and the header, we'll pull in Tram-One, and we'll export a function that returns some div with some text. We'll add this element to our HTML in main.js and to our homepage. Now we can see the text in our page. We can pass in custom text from main.js using attributes. Let's pass in some custom text into our output. All element functions actually take in two parameters, adders and children. We won't go into children in this tutorial, but adders is how we read in the variables that we've been given by our parent components. Just like any other variable, we can use it with the $ curly brace. We now see our text from main.js in our output div. Now we won't be going into the nuances of how to translate English to Pig Latin. I've written a pig.js in advance, and we'll paste that into our project. You can copy it from the GitHub project included, or take it as an exercise for the reader. Our input isn't connected in any meaningful way to our output, though. We'll need some kind of way to do state management. Tram-One includes a way to do state management with mini-ducks, an implementation of Redux, a Flux framework. We won't be going into how Redux works, and the reducers we'll be building here will be bare bones. Like our elements, our reducer is just a function. This function takes in the current state of the text area and an action, telling it how it should change. We'll do different things based on the type of action that we get. Our reducer will take in actions that aren't always important for the input, so in those cases we'll just go to default. If we get an action with the type new input, then we know that we have to update what we have in the text area tag. Whatever the value we return in the reducer will be the new value for our text area. That's why it's important that we always return something, even if it's an action we don't care about. Now we'll add the reducer to the app using the add reducer function. It takes in the field that we should use to get the state, the function, which we will pull from our reducer file, and a default value for the state. In a more realistic app, we'd probably use an empty string for the default value. To use values from the reducer, top-level components, in this case home, can take in a parameter state. We can use the reducer value by calling state and the field we set when we added the reducer to the app. Now we see the output has changed to the default value of the reducer. We still need to connect our reducer to our input element though. In order to do this, we need a function we can call when any change happens on the element. We'll make a function that takes in an event and dispatches a new action to our reducer. We'll add the function as an attribute that pig input takes in. Like the output, we'll also want the value of our input reducer so that we can render it in our text area. We'll add the adders parameter to our input and then bind the function to onInput so that the action is dispatched whenever we type something in the text area. With adders.value in the text area, we'll see the default value of the reducer and any other values that occur. And with that, our app is complete. If we take a final look at the DOM, we'll see that it's pretty clean. Tram-One is a fairly new framework, but I've built quite a few web apps with it, and I've really enjoyed working with it, as well as on it. If you have any issues or questions, feel free to get issues on the Tram-One repo, comment here, or message me on Twitter at JRJorman. Link in the video description. Thanks guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed learning about this most bodacious framework.